Hi Year 10. So our next topic is trigonometry. Once again, just like Pythagoras, this should hopefully just be a revision as it is part of grade 9 curriculum. And when we come to the problem solving, that's where you may need to think a bit more. There's some interesting questions in there for you to try. So trigonometry, it's a branch of mathematics that deals with the relationship between the side lengths and angles of triangles. So when we have a right angle triangle with angle theta, as I've got drawn there already, hypotenuse is the longest side, which we said with Pythagoras, and then you have the opposite side to the angle and the adjacent side to the angle. So you just need to look at where the angle is, and then the opposite side, look at the angle and it's a side directly opposite the angle you are looking at. Then adjacent is the side next to the angle you're looking at. We have three trig ratios that are sine theta, cos theta and tan theta. And so sine theta is opposite over hypotenuse, cos theta is adjacent over hypotenuse, and tan theta is opposite over adjacent. Some of you may have learnt this in school as SOHCAHTOA. That's how many people like to remember it. So the first letter is if it's sine, cos or tan. The middle letter is the letter on top of the fraction, and the last letter is the letter on the bottom of the fraction. Alright, let's do some questions with these. So first example, we want to find x rounded to three significant figures. So we look here, we've got our angle, and now we just want to look at what sides do we have. Do we have the opposite, the adjacent, or the hypotenuse? So if you look here, if this was a right angle, the right angle will be there. And so from the angle, do we have the hypotenuse? Yes, we've got the longest side. And then we've got the side opposite the angle. So we've got an opposite and a hypotenuse. If you look at those ratios, the one that has that in is sine. So we're going to be going with the sine, and then the angle, 61, equals the opposite side, which is x, over the hypotenuse, which is 9.6. Now from here we have to rearrange it, so we have x equals. Because the x is on the top of the fractions, it's nice and easy, we just have to multiply the 9.6 to the other side. So we'll get 9.6 sine 61 equals x. Now I do it that way and put the 9.6 in front of the sine 61, because for some people they'll put it afterwards, but in their calculator then they won't use their brackets properly, so they end up with the wrong answer. So if you just put 9.6 out the front and then times sine 61, you won't make a mistake. And if you put that in your calculator, you will get x is equal to 8.40, and that is rounded to three significant figures. So because it is three significant figures, we have to include that 0 at the end. We can't leave it as 8.4. Okay, B. Look here, so we've got our right angle. Then we have an x, a 7.8 and a 41 degrees. So we need to look here at what ratio do we need to use. The one we don't have is the hypotenuse. We don't have the side opposite the right angle, which is always our hypotenuse. So which means we have the opposite and the adjacent, which if we look at our ratios, that will be tan. Because tan theta equals opposite over adjacent. So then we just write our equation. So tan of the angle, which is 41, equals the side opposite the angle. So if we now look at our diagram here, the angle's here, the side opposite that is the 7.8, and that's going to be divided by the side next to the angle, which is x. Now rearranging here is a little bit different. Really quick way to do it, if your unknown is at the bottom of the fraction, quick way is to just swap the x and the tan 41. Okay, so if the unknown's on the bottom of the fraction, just swap those two over. Put that in your calculator and we will end up with 8.97 meters, and that's rounded to three significant figures. Now we can also find the sizes of angles using these formulas. So we want to now, in these two examples, we're going to work out what the angle is. So first of all, look at the triangle again, work out which ratio we're going to be using. So our right angle is here. We don't have the side opposite the right angle, so we don't have the hypotenuse, which means we have opposite and adjacent, so that's going to be tan again. Now this time when we do our working out, we're going to have tan, and we don't know what the angle is, so we're going to leave that as theta. And then our opposite the angle is the 4, and the side next to the angle is 7. Now in the rearranging here, we have to separate the tan and the theta. And there's no such thing of dividing just by tan. It's always got to have something after it. So the way we do that is actually use the inverse of tan. So it'll be theta equals tan -1, and then the brackets 4/7. Then when you put that in your calculator, you will get 29.7. And this is find the angle, so it will be degrees as our units. Now with your calculators and the inverse, normally it is on your scientific calculators, you'll press the shift button normally, and then press the tan, and that should be the tan -1. If you're having problems finding where the sine cos tan or the inverse of sine -1, cos -1 or tan negative buttons are, just send me a picture of your calculator through an email, and then I can just give you some steps on where to find that. Okay. On your graphics calculators, if you have a graphics calculator already, what you will find is that there is a little trig button on the calculator. Underneath the control button, there is a button next to the equal sign that says trig. If you press that, it will come up with all the possible trig functions. So you just select which one you want, and then in the brackets, put the values that you need. And then for B, let's have a look now at B. So we have finding the angle again. This time, if we look, we know the hypotenuse, because there's our right angle, so we know the side opposite the right angle, but we don't know the side opposite the angle we are trying to find. We don't know that, which means we need the adjacent and the hypotenuse. And if you look there, you'll find that that is cos. So the cos of theta equals the adjacent, so that's 2.67, and divided by our hypotenuse, which is 5.92. Now once again, we're trying to find the angle, so we have to do the inverse of cos, so cos -1 of that division. Now what I also would recommend, do not work out what 2.67 divided by 5.92 is first, because you will use a rounded answer then, and the IB doesn't like you using rounded answers throughout your working out, because your final answer will end up incorrect. So I would leave your fraction as it is, just like I've written there, and then just put that whole thing in your calculator, and you'll get 63.2 degrees, and you round in then only a final answer, and then you won't make any mistakes, and you won't lose any silly marks because you've rounded too early. And that's all for this lesson on the trig ratios. As I said, hopefully it's just revision. If you are struggling, remember, just email your teacher. We'll get back to you as soon as we can and help you out with what we are able to. Show all your work in once again in this booklet. So if there are any mistakes, we can find out where you're going wrong. Good luck with this, and I will talk to you soon.